This next one is a big one, because the next one is what the majority of people actually aspire to, and that's level 4 of wealth, which is freedom. This freedom means your money now works harder than you do. What do we mean by that, Bo?
We love the idea of the fact that we know our dollars, if we put in time, if we build our army of dollar bills big enough, they can work harder than we do with our brains, our back, our hands, and our feet. And we love this so much that on our net worth tool, if you're using the exact same net worth tool that Brian and I do every year, there's actually a section there that shows you how powerful is my army.
Yeah.
How hard is my army working? When you get into financial freedom, what you uncover is that your dollars are adding more wealth, or doing a better job building your enterprise than you do with your earned income, than you do outworking. When you reach that stage where your money can now essentially replace you, there's a really good chance that you're in the financial freedom stage.
What I love about the net worth tool, because I've done mine, I looked to see what it did this year, is that we're actually using the investable assets. This is actually, whether you're talking about your retirement accounts, your emergency reserves, your taxable investments, that's the change we're talking about. Because when I'm talking about what your investable assets grew over the last year, exceeding what you made in income last year, it's not being, changed or altered by home equity and other things like that. Because I think a lot of people get a false sense of where they are in their financial journey. I love that our tool lets people really see, are your army of dollar bills more powerful than what you can actually earn with your back, your brain, and your hands? It's in the tool, and I love that we built that in there.
All right, so let's talk about what financial freedom is. Let's talk about this level. Financial freedom is actually the stage of wealth most people aspire to. This is what you hear people talk about. Hey, I want to retire one day. I want to step away from the workforce. I want to fill in the blank. Well, when they say that, what they're saying is, I want to reach the financial freedom stage of wealth so that I can do the things that I want to do. It's where you can do what you want, when you want, and how you want. Isn't that what most of us talk about? That's ultimately the reason we're doing all this saving, the reason we're trying to build towards this, is so that we can have that reality. And it's when you have the ability to cover not only your current financial needs. I can pay the bills today, but I have been saving long enough, and I've built up an army of dollar bills behind me that I can also pay for all the needs that my future self will have for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and this is an important one, because I think it's also freedom. What it's not, though, is that it doesn't mean that you're no longer working. It means you might be.
I think you're happy to hear that, right?
There's some people, I've told you guys, I aspired when I was in my 20s that when I got into my 50s, I was no longer going to be working. And I've reached that level, but I choose to work now. We have somebody who follows our content. They're part of the FIRE movement, and I thought it was kind of crafty what they wrote. Instead of financial independence, retire early, they just created some content that said, what was it? Recreational employment. Meaning that they changed the R and the E instead of retire early to recreational employment, because now when you have margin, when you built up freedom, you get to choose how you live your life. And you might find you actually enjoy work, but you want to do the work that brings you purpose, and that you wake up on Monday morning or when you go to bed Sunday night and you feel excited about it, versus feeling like it's pressure on your shoulders, like I think a lot of workers feel.
Yep. Here's the other thing that financial freedom is not. Freedom is not easy or obtained overnight. And I think that we live in a world where social media and all the folks around you want to tell you how easy it is to be wealthy and be independent tomorrow. The fact of the matter is, it takes time. It takes time, and it is not complicated, but it's hard work. You have to make some difficult decisions throughout the course of an entire working life to get to the point to where you can be financially free to focus on the things that you want to focus on. If you're trying to figure out in New Year's resolution, how can I be financially free by the end of this year? That's going to be a hard charge. Recognize it takes time to get to this level of wealth.
So if it takes time, let's also talk about signs that you're doing it right. Because if this is going to be a long journey, we need to what are some of the indicators along the way? The first thing is, you've actually stress test the plan. I mean, this is an important, we've already heard, because we even know security was people in their 40s and beyond. So if you're at freedom, you've definitely got enough assets behind you. You should be stress testing them with a plan for all the things that you're worried about. What could come at you in life, whether it's a market downturn, the real estate market collapsing, you losing your job. You've stress tested your plan and you know you're going to be okay.
Yeah, because remember, at this stage, you have to pay for both your current expenses as well as your future expenses. So you have to think about what are those future things that might happen that could derail me, and do I know that even if those circumstances come to pass, I'm going to be okay. So that is the quantitative version of how to know if I'm doing right. What about the qualitative? How do I know if I'm doing this right? Well, do you understand what this next phase of life looks like? Because a lot of people, if you are someone who is aspiring to financial freedom, and for you, financial freedom means leaving the job that you've previously done, do you know what you're moving away from? Do you actually know what you're moving away to? Have you planned out if you're going to live in financial freedom for the next 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years? What are you going to do? How are you going to occupy your time? What are the things that are going to consume you during that stage? Because the qualitative part can be just as important as the quantitative.
Well, I think a lot of people are good at the building of wealth, but then they realize, man, this transition, now that I've reached freedom, or I think I've reached freedom, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to transition from builder to now consumer. So we've actually, and you don't even know what you don't know. That's okay. Because if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, we actually created a great retirement resource guide. It's even titled The Money Guy Guide to Retirement. Kind of a tongue twister there, because you got guy and guide together, but it is one of those. Go look at this, and this is go walk you through the 9 things that you really ought to kind of consider when you are thinking you're at the decision point or the threshold of retirement.
You'll also know that you're doing financial freedom right when the way that you think about things begins to morph a little bit. It may be something as simple as, hey, I used to keep 3 to 6 months of expenses. Now I keep 12 to 18 months of expenses. It may be how you do your charitable giving. I used to write checks. Now I use a charitable giving account. Now I do QCDs. It may be how you're managing your income over a year. Maybe I'm doing advanced strategies like Roth conversion strategies. Just the things that you think about and the reasons behind your decisions change a little bit. It's not just about how do I build more, have more, get more, save more. It's how do I optimize and make my current financial life as efficient as it can be, both for me today, me in the future, as well as my heirs when I'm no longer here.
I thought it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast, and it was a person that hates financial advisors. and they shared that the reason they hate financial advisors is because the system is skewed, that when people have the most, they're older, and they felt like it was taking advantage of people when they were at that largest point of assets, so it's probably costing them the most. Now, I felt like, look, when we're talking about freedom, these aren't poor people.
No.
These are people with resources. And it's one of those things, when I think about freedom, you don't know what you don't know. And there's actually more work. As you were going through that list of all your things that will change when you reach freedom. Your cash reserves is going to change. The way you give to charity is going to change. The way you can, when you're taking Medicare, when you're taking Social Security, when you're doing Roth conversion strategies and trying to thread the needle from a tax standpoint, all your tax buckets. There are so many things. That's why I chuckled out loud when I listened to that. I was like, this person doesn't understand the intersection of what wealthy people need and how you optimize your path. But it's maybe they haven't reached that journey themselves. They were much younger. They weren't a person in their 50s like I am, who's also been working with wealthy people for decades. I see the insecurities of people who've been so good at building, and now when they're at that stage of changing from builder to consumer and all the things the government, as well as just the life choices that will happen, this is when a financial advisor really can be your co-pilot, and you can take the relationship to the next level. Because that's the big thing that I think a financial advisor can do. And freedom is a great place, because what you don't want to do is make a mistake with your 7-figure plus enterprise because you just didn't want to. You heard somebody, a talking head on social media, or you saw a clip, and you're like, stay away from those financial advisors. Think about the fact, remember, When the market loses 20%, you only have to make 25% to get it back. When it loses 50%, you have to make 100%. Go beyond, like when you lose 70% and you go, holy cow, that would take years, maybe even decades to recover. Don't fall into those traps. This is a celebration once you reach this stage of financial independence and freedom.